the mockery. The laughter started before humanity's fleet even finished docking at the Galactic Council station. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the sleek vessels of the Zephyrian Empire glide past their position. Their ships looked like living art, surfaces rippling with energy fields that seemed to bend light itself. Beside them, the crystalline vessels of the Karathi sparkled like diamonds carved into impossible geometries. The organic bioships of the Threnody pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that would have been beautiful if they weren't so obviously meant to intimidate. And then there were the human ships. Welded steel plates, exposed weapon ports, cables running along hulls like veins, engine pods that looked bolted on as afterthoughts. The Defiance herself bore scorch marks from atmospheric entry tests, patches where micrometeorites had been hastily repaired, and a hull that was more function than form. The alien representatives watching from the station's observation decks pointed and gestured in what needed no translation. They were laughing. Chen's jaw tightened as Communications Officer Williams piped in the general channel. The translator converted dozens of alien languages into English, but the tone was universal: mockery, disdain, amusement. The Zephyrian Admiral's melodious voice cut through the chatter like silk wrapped around a blade. The humans have arrived in their vessels. How quaint that they welded their atmospheric transports together and called them starships. The bridge crew of the Defiance shifted uncomfortably. Lieutenant Marcus Rivera, standing at tactical, muttered something under his breath that Chen pretended not to hear. She knew what they were all thinking. Earth had only discovered FTL travel 18 months ago, reverse engineering a crashed probe. While other species had centuries to perfect their ships, humanity had scrambled to build a fleet in mere months. Every ship was different, cobbled together from whatever worked. Nuclear reactors sat next to fusion cores. Chemical thrusters backed up gravity drives. It was chaos given form, held together by human stubbornness and industrial tape. "Captain, incoming transmission from the Council," Williams announced. Chen straightened her uniform. A simple gray affair that looked primitive compared to the holographic displays the aliens favored. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the Council chamber. 7 species sat in judgment, their representatives arranged in a perfect circle. The Zephyrian Empress, resplendent in her flowing energy robes, spoke first. "Humans of Earth, you come before this council seeking membership, seeking trade rights, seeking a place among the civilized species of the galaxy. Yet you arrive in vessels that would be insulting to call ships. They are debris, held together by primitive welding and hope. The galaxy has standards, little mammals, standards you clearly cannot meet." Chen stepped forward, her voice steady despite the anger burning in her chest. "Honored Council, humanity requests only the opportunity to prove ourselves. Our ships may not meet your aesthetic standards, but they are space-worthy. We have traveled here across 12 light-years without incident. Surely function matters more than form." The crystalline Karathi ambassador chimed, its voice like breaking glass. "Function? Your ships leak radiation. They burn chemical fuel like savage torches. Your weapons?" It paused, consulting a holographic display. "Kinetic projectiles? Explosive warheads? These are the tools of primitives, not spacefaring civilizations. We use directed energy, contained plasma, graviton beams. You use bullets." The laughter resumed, echoing through the council chamber and across every open channel. Chen heard it reverberate through her ship as other vessels picked up the transmission. 400 human souls spread across 12 ships, all hearing their species being reduced to a punchline. But Chen had studied history. She knew that humanity had always been underestimated. The Mongols had been called barbarians by China. The American colonies had been dismissed by the British Empire. Earth itself had been overlooked by these very aliens for centuries because they couldn't imagine intelligence arising from such a chaotic world. Perhaps a demonstration would be more appropriate than words, the Threnody representative suggested, its bioluminescent skin pulsing with what Chen recognized as amusement. "The Zephyrian Empire has graciously offered to conduct war games with the human fleet. A simple exercise to evaluate your capabilities." Chen's tactical display lit up immediately. 3 Zephyrian destroyers were moving into attack position, their energy shields shimmering like soap bubbles around their perfect hulls. The Council wanted a show, wanted to see the primitive humans humiliated. Chen looked at Rivera, who was already running calculations. His eyes met hers, and she saw something that made her almost smile. He wasn't afraid. None of her crew were. They were angry. "We accept," Chen said simply. The Zephyrian admiral's laughter was like music. "Excellent. We shall use training protocols, of course. Low-power beams, disabled warheads. We wouldn't want to actually hurt you." The contempt in those words could have curdled milk. "Though I doubt your primitive weapons could even scratch our shields if you tried." Chen cut the transmission and turned to her bridge crew. The anger in the room was palpable but controlled. These were professionals, each one hand-picked for this moment. Engineers who had worked 70-hour weeks to make these ships fly. Pilots who had learned to navigate in 3 dimensions while the rest of Earth still thought in 2. Gunners who had practiced in asteroid fields because they couldn't afford proper firing ranges. "Rivera, status on our special packages?" Chen asked quietly. "All 12 ships report full loads, Captain. The shells are... well, they're exactly what we promised. Nothing fancy. Just steel tungsten cores and a little surprise the Zephyrians won't expect." Chen nodded. The galaxy had forgotten something fundamental about warfare. They had become so advanced, so dependent on energy shields and exotic particles, that they had forgotten the simple physics that governed the universe. Energy shields were designed to dissipate energy weapons. They could stop lasers, deflect plasma, even bend graviton beams. But they were never designed to stop simple, stupid mass moving at significant fractions of light speed. "All ships, this is Defiance Actual," Chen broadcast to the human fleet. "You've heard what they think of us. You've heard them laugh. They think our ships are junk. They think we're primitives playing with toys. They're about to learn that humanity didn't crawl out of the gravity well of Earth by being weak. We survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and our own stupidity. We built these ships with our bare hands in 18 months. Now let's show them what human engineering can do when it's angry." The 12 human ships spread into formation, not the elegant ballet of the Zephyrian fleet, but something else. Something that looked chaotic until you realized it was calculated chaos. Overlapping fields of fire, mutual support positions, redundant targeting solutions. It was ugly, brutalist, and absolutely lethal. The Zephyrian admiral's voice crackled over the comm. "Humans, you may fire when ready. We'll give you the first shot, as a courtesy to the less advanced." Chen looked at her crew. Williams at communications, pale but determined. Rivera at tactical, his fingers dancing over controls that had been jury-rigged from gaming hardware because it was what he knew best. Engineer Thompson in the depths of the ship, keeping their hybrid reactor from melting down through sheer force of will and creative profanity. All of them had been told they were jokes. All of them were about to prove otherwise. All ships weapons-free. Show them what Earth thinks of their courtesy. The first human shell fired from the UES Hammer was a simple tungsten rod, 20 feet long and 3 feet wide, wrapped in a steel jacket. It left the railgun at 12% the speed of light. To the Zephyrian sensors, it must have looked like a glitch. A primitive projectile moving fast but seemingly harmless. Their shields, designed to stop energy, barely registered it as a threat. The rod hit the lead Zephyrian destroyer's shield bubble and passed through it like it wasn't there. 20 tons of tungsten and steel, moving at 40,000 kilometers per second, carrying the kinetic energy of a small nuclear weapon. It struck the perfect, beautiful hull and turned it into abstract art. The destroyer didn't explode so much as cease to exist in any organized form. Its matter scattered across 1,000 kilometers of space. The laughter stopped. The reckoning for 3 seconds, the galaxy held its breath. The Zephyrian destroyer's destruction played across every screen, every sensor, every watching eye in the council station. Where once had been a masterpiece of engineering and aesthetics now drifted an expanding cloud of superheated metal and organic remains. The human fleet hadn't even fired in unison. That was a single shot from a single ship, and it had deleted one of the Empire's finest vessels from existence. The Zephyrian admiral's melodious voice cracked as it screamed across the comms. "Impossible. That was a full-power shield. You fired a solid projectile. The physics don't... It can't..." Captain Chen's response was calm, almost conversational. "Your shields are designed to dissipate energy, Admiral. They interact with photons, with charged particles, with exotic matter, but a chunk of tungsten moving at relativistic speeds? That's just mass and velocity. Newton's laws don't care about your advanced technology." The remaining 2 Zephyrian destroyers began evasive maneuvers, their perfect formations dissolving into panic. Their energy weapons lashed out, brilliant beams of coherent light that would have been devastating to any energy-based defense. But the human ships had no energy shields. They had something else. Thick armor plates of compressed carbon and steel, angled to deflect rather than absorb. Ablative coating that burned away in layers, dissipating heat. Point defense systems that weren't elegant but were numerous, filling space with clouds of metallic chaff and micro-missiles. Lieutenant Rivera watched his tactical display with grim satisfaction. The Zephyrian beams were having effect, certainly. The UES Gibraltar was venting atmosphere from a hull breach. The UES Phoenix had lost 2 engine pods. But they kept flying, kept fighting, because human ships were built with one philosophy: redundancy. Every system had a backup. Every backup had a backup. You could blow half a human ship away and the other half would keep shooting. Second volley, all ships fire, Chen commanded. This time the human fleet fired as one. 12 ships, each carrying 4 railguns, each railgun loaded with different ammunition. Some fired solid tungsten. Others fired canisters that split apart into thousands of smaller projectiles, creating walls of hypervelocity shrapnel. The UAS Havoc, whose crew had a sense of humor, fired shells filled with ball bearings and industrial adhesive because someone had wondered what would happen if you gummed up the joints of an alien ship. The Zephyrian admiral tried to respond tactically, but there was no doctrine for this. For 300 years, space combat had been about energy management, shield modulation, beam coherence. It had become almost ritualistic, ships dancing at distances where light lag mattered, battles decided by who could maintain their systems longest. The humans weren't playing that game. They had brought a different rule book, one written in the mud and blood of Earth's surface where combat was dirty, brutal, and decisively kinetic. The second Zephyrian destroyer tried to accelerate away, its gravity drive straining. It might have escaped if space combat was still about long distances and energy exchanges, but the human ships were closing, burning hard on chemical thrusters that the galaxy had deemed obsolete. Obsolete but immediate. No exotic matter to spin up, no gravitons to align, just Newton's third law in its purest form. Throw mass one way, go the other way. The UES Thunder got within 5,000 kilometers and fired a special package, not tungsten this time, but a canister of compressed metallic sodium. When it breached the destroyer's hull, the sodium met the water vapor in the Zephyrian atmosphere. The chemical reaction was violent, primitive, and absolutely devastating. Rivera couldn't help but grin as the destroyer's interior lit up like a stellar core. Sir Isaac Newton remains the deadliest son of a bitch in space, he muttered, quoting an old military instructor. The third destroyer, seeing its compatriots destroyed by weapons it couldn't comprehend, did something unprecedented in Zephyrian military history. It surrendered. The admiral's perfect composure shattered completely as he broadcast on all frequencies. "Cease fire! Cease fire!" The exercise is concluded. But Chen wasn't done making her point. "Admiral, you said this was an evaluation of our capabilities. We're not finished demonstrating." The UES Defiance moved forward, its ugly, scarred hull pushing through the debris field of the first destroyer. Chen had her crew broadcast everything on open channels. The galaxy needed to see this, needed to understand. The human ship's cargo bay opened and out came something that made the watching aliens recoil. Drones. Hundreds of them. Not sleek, not elegant, boxy things with manipulator arms and cutting torches designed for asteroid mining. But the aliens watched in horror as these crude machines began collecting the debris, cutting it apart, feeding it into the Defiance's onboard refineries. "You see," Chen broadcast to the Council, "humans don't just destroy, we recycle. Your beautiful ship is now raw materials for our next vessel. We've been doing this since before we could write, taking our enemies' weapons and making them our own. Your contempt, your laughter, your mockery. We'll forge those into weapons too." The Council chamber had fallen silent. The Karathi ambassador's crystalline form flickered with what might have been fear. The Thrinotes' bioluminescence had dimmed to almost nothing. Even the other species, those who had watched from the sidelines, seemed to shrink back from their viewing screens. They had expected to see humanity humbled. Instead, they had seen something that challenged their entire understanding of warfare, of civilization, of progress itself. The Empress of the Zephyrian Empire, who had not spoken since the first destroyer was destroyed, finally found her voice. It was no longer melodious. It was strained, cracking with disbelief. You fired weapons of mass destruction in a training exercise." "No," Chen corrected. "We fired solid projectiles, as you noted. Primitive kinetic weapons. Exactly what you expected from us. The fact that you never considered what those projectiles could do at sufficient velocity is not our failure. It's yours. You became so advanced that you forgot the basics. Energy is energy, whether it comes from a laser or from mass times velocity squared. Engineer Thompson's voice crackled over the internal comm from the engine room. Captain, the other alien fleets are pulling back. I'm reading drive signatures from 30 ships, all retreating to minimum safe distance. Chen nodded. The message had been received. But there was one more thing to do. Council, humanity formally requests membership in the galactic community. Our ships may not be beautiful, but they work. Our weapons may be primitive, but they're effective. We don't seek conflict, but we won't tolerate contempt. We've heard your laughter. Now you've heard our response. The vote was unanimous, not because the Council wanted humanity as members, but because they were terrified of what humanity might do as enemies. The crude, ugly human ships were granted full transit rights, trade licenses, and defensive treaties. No one laughed at the welded hulls anymore. No one mocked the exposed cables or the chemical burns. They had learned what Earth's children had always known. That beauty without strength was just decoration. But strength without beauty was still strength. As the human fleet departed the Council station, heading back to Earth with news of their success, alien observers noted something that chilled them even more than the battle had. The humans were already modifying their ships, incorporating salvaged Zephyrian technology into their crude hulls, not replacing their kinetic weapons but supplementing them. In 18 months, humanity had gone from discovering FTL to defeating the galaxy's most advanced military. What would they accomplish in 18 years? Captain Sarah Chen stood on her bridge, looking at the stars that were no longer foreign territory but potential allies or threats. Lieutenant Rivera approached with a report. Captain, the crew wants to know if we should pretty up the ships now that we're members of the Council. Chen looked at the Defiance's scarred hull on the external monitor. Every weld, every patch, every burn mark told a story of human determination. No, Lieutenant. Let them see us as we are. Ugly, functional, and absolutely unstoppable when we need to be. The galaxy had learned an important lesson that day. They had laughed at human ships, mocked their primitive appearance and crude construction. But when those ships' guns fired, when tungsten met shield and chemistry met biology, the laughter died. It was replaced by something far more valuable, respect born from fear and fear born from understanding. Humanity didn't need pretty ships. They had something far more dangerous, the willingness to use whatever worked, no matter how primitive it seemed. Back on Earth, factories were already retooling. The next generation of human ships would still be ugly by galactic standards, but they would incorporate alien technology in ways the galaxy had never imagined. Energy shields layered with a blade of armor, graviton beams mounted next to chemical cannons. Beauty and brutality merged into something new, something uniquely human. The galaxy had stopped laughing, but humanity had just begun to smile.